My name is Nikki Sanders, and I am the new chair of the Northside Planning Council. We are thrilled to hold this event with 5 mayoral candidates, and we're planning on a wonderful evening for you. We've got some questions planned out. But a little bit about the Planning Council. We were founded in 1993, now in our 22nd year in operation. We're proud to be leading efforts on Northside, such as the Feed Kitchens down on Sherman Avenue, Northside News that comes to your mailboxes every other month, as well as working with partners and involved community citizens such as yourselves on programs such as Northside United. We just launched the Year of Equity following the Racial Equity Forum that we held on January 26th. Our next meeting for that, by the way, is February 16th at 6 o'clock, right here at the Warner Park Center. Also, our Sunday suppers that we hold 5 times a year. The next Sunday supper will be March 29th here at the center from 4 to 6. And Youth Council and the Northside Youth Empowerment Summit. Great times for our Northside youth. We're in our 3rd year for that. And the Northside Economic Development Coalition, a partnership with the Northside Business Association. Our goal is to bring more businesses and a more diverse group of businesses to the Northside. And other great efforts like the Independence Day celebration, the event that we had last year. Who needs rhythm and booms anyway, right? So what I would like to do is recognize our elected officials that have come here tonight. I saw come through the door Melissa Sargent, our state representative. Thank you, Melissa. Both of our alders, Anita Weir and Larry Palm. And County Board Supervisors, Michelle Ritt and Paul Russ. Thank you. Oh, Mo Cheeks is here too. Mo Cheeks is alderperson, yes. I met you at United Way at the November training, so welcome. Also, to get to our purpose here tonight, you guys don't want to hear me, you want to hear them, right? Yes. So I want to introduce 2 of my colleagues on the Planning Council, Walt Stewart and Tiffany Werner. They're going to be our moderators for tonight. So thank you for coming, and let's celebrate the great things we're doing here on the North Side. Thank you.
As Nikki said, I'm Walt Stewart. I'll be one of your moderators tonight. We have a format that we're following. We have 3 prepared questions, which each candidate will be asked to answer. You're welcome to write down your questions for the candidates. I'm concerned that we won't have enough time to deal with a lot of the questions, but Tiffany will explain how we're going to handle the questions that don't get addressed tonight. We will have closing comments. Each candidate will have 2.5 to 3 minutes to answer each question. There will be closing comments by each candidate, and those will be 2 minutes each. We will be keeping time on all the segments and the candidate responses. And our intention is to end before 7:30, not carrying this until 9 o'clock like the last one, because we want to give you an opportunity to meet the candidates personally, have a meet and greet as we're exiting. So the first segment of the night, we ask the candidates to introduce themselves. They'll have up to 3 minutes to tell us who they are. So each candidate, please introduce yourself and tell us what you think is the single most pressing issue facing the city and what you feel personally you can do to address this issue if elected. We are going to proceed in alphabetical order, starting with candidate Brown.
I want to thank everybody for coming. My name is Richard Brown. I really want to be your mayor. I want to use my strong fiscal background to hold the line on taxes. And that's the big thing for me, because I feel if we hold the line on taxes, we can keep our, well, this Mac is acting out. We hold the line on taxes, we can keep the housing stable. the more and more the taxes go up, the more and more the housing prices are going to go up. And we got people that are just barely making it. People that are sleeping on couches. People that are just a little bit away from being homeless. And there's a lot of things, economic development, and everything starts with holding the line on taxes. And my strong fiscal background, I was an auditor for the Legislative Audit Bureau. I was an auditor for the Legislative Audit Bureau. I was the business manager at Mendota Mental Health Institution, and after that I became the director of operations at Mendota Mental Health Institution. After that I became a budget and policy analyst for Health and Family Services over the 3 DD centers, Southern Wisconsin Center, Northern Wisconsin Center, and Central Wisconsin Center. After that, I left and I became a Title I accountant. No child left behind. Yeah. After that, well, okay, after that, no child left behind. So I distribute all the Title I funds throughout the state. I left there and I ran my own business. So I actually been in the business, ran my own business as a property manager. So I have the housing background. And then after I left there, I became after I left there, I became the, after I left there, I became, after I left there, I became one of the days today. Let me refresh. After I left there, I became, right now where I'm at, I'm the systems accountant for Dane County. I can't use this mic. I'm the systems accountant for Dane County right now, so that's what I do right now. And I left there. One of the things I want to say that I've done a lot of things in the community. I coach the Southside Raiders. I coach Eastside football, Go Pearl Golders. And so, I've done a lot in the community. 2011, I became, in 2011, I got the J.C. Wright Award, the Humanitarian Award. And so, I've done a lot of things, and all the things that I've done, I just want to let you guys know that I've been working hard, just trying to do all the things that we need to bring this city together. One city, one Madison, one future. When we work together for the common good, we're better. We're all better. And so that's what I want to tell you. Thank you, guys.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Daly, and I'd just like to say that it is my mother's birthday tonight. She is here in the audience. Happy birthday. Thank you. And so, as many of you know, I've got somewhat of a reputation for being an activist around town. And I'm quite proud of that. I think that Madison has a very strong, progressive, activist history. And I'm very, very proud to be a part of it. As far as the most pressing issue facing our city goes, I think that Richard mentioned a few things that are quite important, including holding the line on taxes, including rental prices, and economic development. So I think that our city right now, we're facing a number of different futures. There's a lot of development that is going on, and some of it is, I don't feel, in line with the character of our city. We are poised right now to see a real explosion of development which may overshadow what makes Madison a special place to live, what makes Madison a city that I would like to raise my own children in. I think that the influx of high technologies companies and the like are threatening to turn us into somewhere else, somewhere like San Francisco or San Antonio, Texas. It is kind of a touchy. So, and I think that what we've seen in other cities that's happened when all of this development gets really out of hand, when large companies move in and squeeze out the smaller local companies, when you see that rental prices do go up. They go up so that people can't even afford to live in the downtown. It becomes a service-based economy unless you're working for these industries which require you to be highly educated and fit a certain profile. And I don't think that that's equitable or fair to the citizens who've lived here for a long time, who maybe don't want to enter into those industries, And it's rather dangerous for us to allow it to go without a significant amount of guidance and consideration. And so I will keep, I've kept these things in mind, and I'm trying to think of ways that we can expand beyond the industries that are currently established and really big. I was talking to a union cab driver last night who was very concerned about the expansion of Uber and Lyft in our city. I think that the way that I don't think that these companies should really be allowed to get carte blanche and do whatever they want in town. I'm glad that they're getting ticketed now, and I think there was 40 infractions in the last year. But my time is up, and I will try to expand on that a little bit more in a few minutes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bridget Mariachi. I was the 2nd District Alderperson for the East Isthmus for 4 years on the Madison Common Council. In 2006-2007, I worked in the mayor's office in my last year of college under Mayor Cheslevich. Madison, some of you guys got flyers here. There's some out in the hallway also. But I'm very proudly a 5th generation Madisonian and very much working class family. My grandmother worked on the assembly line at Railback, and my grandfather worked up here over driving trucks at Kroger. For their second jobs, they waitressed and bartended over at the Esquire. So, yeah. So I have been, I remember coming to Brennan's with my grandmother as a small child. This part of town is very near and dear to my heart. I hope that you'll take a look at the record, especially as we go on here this evening. I've worked very hard in the time on the City Council to look at where we are heading as a city and where we've been in the past. I was very fortunate to represent the Capital East District corridor, and you can see there where the Gishold machine plant was. You can see finally where there's been a lot that hasn't been happening, suddenly there is. And to the question here this evening about what's the greatest factor facing our city right now that whoever's in the mayor's office has to deal with, for me, I look at it and I think we're hitting our growth wall. This is one of the very few parts of the city that still has open land available. And we're really hitting into a new generation of our city moving forward. There's not a lot of room left to expand. And Richard talks about holding the line on taxes. And the reality is that with Walker, with the Republicans, with what's happened in the legislature, and with the changes in law to what we can do with our taxes, if we don't grow, if we don't have tax base, we are not going to be able to support facilities like this. And so I'm working very hard, and I'd like to continue on, and I'd like to take this to the next level in the mayor's office to be able to have the resources to grow. And so I feel like of all the candidates here, with judging that balance between the past and the present of where we're heading as a city, I'm very firmly rooted, and I guess to go back even further, where Lakeshore is, that was the family sauerkraut farm, and they sold it to the Ramishes back in the 20s. So I have a very clear sense of who we've been as a city moving forward, but now it's about where we're going. And I'm 31, and I have friends who are buying houses here on the north side and talking with them. So how do we bridge the residents that have been here for 30 years, and how do we bridge that next 30-year resident? And that's what I'd like to work on as mayor. Thank you.
So I'm Scott Resnick, and I'm committed to your success. This is a mentality that I've used in the for-profit world, in the non-profit world, in the business that I started 7 years ago. I truly believe that Madison is a great place to work and live. It's why I came here from Wausau, Wisconsin about 10 years ago. I came here for school. This was the city to find success. It's a city that everybody's envious of throughout our entire state. When you're someone young, growing up in Wausau, you want to get out of Wausau to live in Madison, Wisconsin. And we were able to find some opportunities. Out of the school, I was able to create a company that now employs 22 people with good jobs, with benefits. We make sure that every single employee has a retirement package when they're 22 years old and starting, so that when they're ready to retire, they have something so they can call their own. We won the best place to work in Madison, and I'm very proud of that award to this day. Madison provided me the opportunity to run for city council. I served last year in leadership, knowing the idea that if we can respect one another, if we can listen to one another, we're able to accomplish so much more. And I'm very proud of the endorsements by Alder Weir and Alder Palm, who helped me get to where I am today with their mentorship and guidance. We are a city that faces major challenges moving forward, and we're going to be looking for new ideas on how to tackle these problems. We can read it in the papers right now. Governor Scott Walker is cutting $300 million out of the UW system. What that means to UW-Madison is 1,000 jobs that will be going away. We need to be looking at what the next generation of jobs in our economy look like in this city, what it feels like, to make sure that everybody, no matter where you live and in what part of the city, can find a place of employment. That it means that if you just even have a high school degree, that you can find a place where you're able to work, and that this is a city that's welcoming to all Madisonians. I think that we can be great. But what that means is we're going to have to work together, the city, the county, our nonprofit and for-profit community, to accomplish so much more. Thank you so much.
How do you do? My name's Paul Soglin. I accompanied Sarah Soglin, not just to this event, but all around Madison. And Sarah, as you all know, was born and raised here, attended all of Madison's, not all of Madison's public schools, but all of her years in school were in Madison Public Schools, as was the case of our 3 daughters. 4 years ago, I came before you and I said there's some problems in the city, serious problems. We have a budget that's out of control, and not only that, a set of spending priorities which are going to stop us from addressing the really critical issues of poverty and equity in the city. My critics said I didn't know what I was talking about, and to quote one of them, there are no troubled neighborhoods in Madison. I said it would take a couple of years to work on that budget, and then we would move on to the questions of poverty and equity, which a whole lot of people have seemed to discover recently. This city has always been an exciting, vibrant place to live. But I want to go back to make a point about how we do things. Because in the 1970s, we created neighborhood planning councils in Madison. I left office and they disappeared and they withered away. I came back into office in 1989, and while meeting with some folks from Minneapolis, they congratulated me on the wonderful success of neighborhood planning councils. I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, we have them up here in the Twin Cities, and we modeled them after what you did in Madison. Well, I figured, having been gone from office and not really having a chance to appreciate what they'd accomplished elsewhere, maybe it was time to bring them back. And of course, you know the history of one of them. You heard it in the introduction today. And that led to things like this facility. And a budget priority saying building neighborhoods is important. Creating planning councils which are based on the work of neighborhood residents, the businesses, the nonprofits, was the way we get things done in Madison. Well, what happened in those 4 years that I've now been back? In the 4 years prior, the capital budget went up 70%. If you look at the capital budget the year before I came back into office, and now, it's up less than 0.5%. If you look at the operating budget, it had been averaging an increase of 4.5% a year. Now it's up 3.5% a year. I kept the commitment to you. Thank you.
So, like we said earlier, we have 3 questions prepared. The topics were given to the candidates, but not the specific questions. We will be collecting questions throughout the night on some 3x5 cards that we have. And if we can't get to all of them, which we likely will not be able to, we are going to type them up and give them to the candidates to answer at a later date. For our first question, 3 of the Northside elementary schools, Lakeview, Mendota, and Lindbergh, have the highest percentage of low-income families in the city at 74% or higher. We know that housing is a key issue for family and neighborhood stability, and we have many substandard low-income apartments, as well as families that move frequently, causing disruption to the students in schools. If elected mayor, what would you do to improve the housing for low-income families and thoroughly evaluate the potential impact to schools and neighborhoods of building any additional high-density units? And we are going to start this with Bailey.
Well, when we're talking about the issue of housing for low-income families, the real issue that we're talking about is their low incomes. I think that the way that we're using the TIF program right now, tax incremental financing, is good. We should be attaching more requirements for affordable housing onto new developments. That will take care of that symptom. But when we want to treat the root cause, we're going to have to address the way that our financial system is built. I'm sure that many people in this room have read a little bit, at least, about the public banking idea. Now, the way that a public bank will work in Madison is that it will take care of the commercial mortgages in town. That means that we'll separate the mortgages of our businesses from the derivatives lending arms of the major private financial institutions. This means, thank you. Thank you. This means that when the market when it fluctuates, when the up and downs of the market produce another crisis, then our businesses will be protected. They will be kept apart from that crisis. This means that our business owners will have greater stability, they'll have more security, and maybe they'll feel a bit more comfortable making a few more investments in our city rather than trying to protect our bottom line. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to create a lot better working conditions for people in our city, new opportunities as well. And not only that, but the interest which is accrued on these mortgages, not to mention the money that we collect in taxes, which would, instead of sitting and just kind of not aggregating, not producing any more money, we would get a return. And with that return, we could reinvest in our public infrastructure. We could invest in new projects. And down the line, we will be able to create credit for ourselves and to finance public works, to finance private ventures. And this is a way that we can hold the line on taxes. Because if we're generating this interest and it's going to paying for city services, then we don't have to continue to raise the property tax rates. We can protect the holdings of the major rental companies and land holding companies in the city, and that means that we won't have to raise taxes on them, and they won't have to raise the rent on their residents. So this is how we can kind of, to quote a friend, first feed two birds with one seed. And I like that better than the alternative. And so, I think that, well, I've got 10 seconds left, and I'll hand it over. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things that came out of the Race to Equity report was that 50% of all African American residents in Dane County live in 15 apartment complexes in 6 neighborhoods. So part of the issues is about this clustering. There's a very real pressure, and right in my neighborhood downtown, we're seeing it firsthand as we're having so many folks come in, largely off of Epic, although not entirely. You have a lot of folks coming in and putting a lot of pressure on our existing housing stock. Epic's on par to add another 3,000 employees in 2015 alone. And most folks are making between $75,000 and $100,000. And when we don't have housing, what's happening is that everybody's getting bumped down the line, where then the folks who have the least amount of spend and the least options for their housing are the ones that are really hurting. So this is an issue that I've seen firsthand. My district had everything from $1 million lakefront mansions to the women and children shelter at Salvation Army. And so I've seen this on a direct neighborhood level, and I've thought a lot about how can we get affordable housing in a timely fashion, because the market on its own is not going to build enough housing to get us to where we need to be. So the proposal I have is to spend between $10 and $15 million a year out of the capital budget. Part of that could be out of TIF district funding, part of it could just be out of the capital budget, and work with developers as they're coming down with proposals so that we're actually building affordable housing as part of market rate developments. Because part of the issue is that the 40-year legacy of the decisions that have been made in the city continues to cluster affordable housing out to where the resources are not there, where the transit system is not there, where the jobs are not present. And so that has real implications in the school. My mother is also sitting here this evening, and she just retired a couple years ago from the school district as a children's librarian. And so I have gone and spent a lot of time volunteering in the schools and have seen firsthand that those issues that are facing the schools and facing the children. And parents are struggling right now. Teachers have a lot on their plate. They are continually asked to do more and more. And so what needs to happen is we need to stand up. I'm 31 and nobody is asking me or anyone I know to volunteer in the schools, to come participate. If we want to really stand up, if we want to save our schools, if we want to get the resources in there, we all need to get involved. And I think that that's something very directly that City Hall can do to help organize. You know, you have to do background checks if you want to come in and volunteer. There's a lot of cooperation and partnership that goes along with housing, it goes along with transit, and it goes along with schools. And we need to get to community-based schools again, and City Hall needs to be a part of that equation. Thank you.
So why do we see so much workforce and affordable housing on the north side? And we see it because land is available and land is affordable. But the real question that's more important in this conversation is, do we want to see enclaves of poverty in the north side? And the answer is unequivocally no. What we need to be looking for is affordable housing options in every single neighborhood. We can't be looking to put affordable housing in only one section of the town. The west side needs to do its part. The downtown needs to do its part. Every single neighborhood needs to step up and be inclusive to affordable workforce development. We need to be looking at strong building codes, so we know if a building is being built, the quality of that building is safe for any one of our residents to live in. We need to be looking at strong schools. And for families that are struggling with childcare, we need to ensure that every single student that lives in Madison, that's raised in Madison, is on equal footing when they step into the schools. It also means, what can we do on our part to help out the schools? Now, I personally help and volunteer with Sherman Middle School. I've ensured that we try to expose as many students to 3D printers. And why 3D printers? As I see that as an advanced manufacturing tool of the future. So trying to expose our students to what the future is going to look like in the workplace and the creative world, and also it's ensuring that we have strong transportation lines. So if you find a job on the north side, or you find a job anywhere in this community, you can get there in an efficient manner. So when I look at bus rapid transit and initial plans, where the north side isn't one of the first to get that, where we're actually leaving the north side off over the west side and other areas of the city, I think that's a shame. We need to be looking at how we can create strong communities throughout our entire city, and the north side needs to be a part of that conversation. We need to listen to our citizens, respect their thoughts, and bring them to the table in every single one of the decisions that we make in City Hall.
In 2011, the city of Madison had the lowest vacancy rate in the United States. We've added, or are adding, 5,000 housing units into Madison over the last 3 years. That has resulted in the vacancy rate rising to a measly 2.5%. Our goal is 5%. Why is this important? It's important because when it's a tight housing market, rents go up for everyone. In addition, landlords have little incentive to make repairs and to take care of maintenance. Now, there's a number of strategies and tactics that we can adopt. One of the first is to utilize two methods available through the state of Wisconsin that have not been used before. One is to use WIDA tax credits. This city was remiss for years and way behind everyone from Milwaukee to Oshkosh in regards to utilizing tax credits to work with developers to provide affordable and workforce housing. The second thing is to utilize a new state opportunity which allows you to extend the life of a TIF district 1 year, and where you're not going to be confined to utilizing the money only in the TIF district. You can now use it anywhere in the city and use it for affordable housing. I think we have to understand that there's going to be problems like we've had at the Woodlands, where we've got housing complexes which are not maintained, and it was not easy. We've had this problem in several areas of the city. Some of you are aware that we had a disagreement with the alder in the district where Nob Hill is, and despite his objections at the time, we went forward working with a nonprofit, and Nob Hill turned out beautifully in regards to reclaiming that and making it not just affordable, but really livable housing with a community facility, which is very important. And I want to stop right there before going on to the Woodlands. Some of you may recall the problems that we had at Vera Court, the problems that we had at North Court Packers, the problems we had at Kennedy Heights. All of those have been significantly improved when you collaborate with the property owners, with nonprofits, and the city. It is critical for the future of the schools that we have viable neighborhoods and that we work with the neighborhood associations, with the housing groups. That is one of the ways the city can strengthen our school system. At the Woodlands, it was not easy. 10 seconds, that's all you would happen at the Woodlands. Well, it's under construction now. We're working on the repairs. We forced the sale of the property, and I'm very pleased with the result. Thank you.
First thing I want to say is we got 1,000 kids that are homeless in our school districts. 1,000 kids that are homeless. And we got people up here to say they kept their commitment. In 2003, we had the race circles. Exactly 5 years later, we had the State of Black Madison by Urban League. And then exactly 5 years later, we had Justified Anger. And I'm saying, not this time. That's what I'm saying. Not this time. Strong fiscal management is what we need. If we look at, for example, the downtown Judge Dole Square, we spent $1 million in studies. Just $1 million in the study. And then another 1,000 hours of staff, high staff time studying these issues. That's $1 million that's just wasted. And that's $1 million that could have put to affordable housing. And people say they kept their commitment. We have 3 people that was on the city council or the mayor during these times, and they kept their commitment. I'm the only one up here that provided affordable housing. I provided affordable housing in this community, and I worked hard, and I made sure. But when I walk every day, when I go to work, I gotta walk past people lying out there, sleeping on the streets. But we say we kept our commitment. There's not one legislation that ever came out from any of these guys that helped us. When we talk about volunteerism, what I want to do is I want to create an office of faith-based partnerships to work with these homes, to work with these homeless families. Because if we do housing first, I know as a landlord, when I was helping homeless families, it was hard. You know, they could pay their money, they would pay the rent, but they didn't know how to act, they didn't know how to live, they didn't know how to maneuver. And so if you attach a whole organization behind them, you can get some help. When we work together for the common good, we're better. And that's the same thing with the Northside Planning Council. You got the neighborhood, you got that network. You guys talk about working together as a network. This is what I'm talking about. When we think about volunteerism, what I want to do is I want to offer the city employees 4 hours a month to volunteer. Vacation time. That's almost 4,000 hours of vacation time. And that's what we can do. They can come, they can work in the community, but we can do right with these houses. We can help, we can do right. But there has to be a will. We look around all the city and we see all these things being built, but where's the affordable housing? There has to be a will. And we can talk about it, but I'm the only one that up here that provided affordable housing and have the strong fiscal background to work this out.
The Northside cares about the disparities highlighted in the Race to Equity report. One specific recommendation in the report is to recruit, train, and promote more persons of color into the management level ranks of the public sector. Our question is, what should be the role of the mayor's office concerning this recommendation to recruit, train, and promote more persons of color into the management level ranks of the public sector? We'll start with Alderman Mariachi.
Thank you. Well, I would say it's critically important. And Mayor Soglin, you've had 3 agency heads that have been hired under your time in office. And I've spoken with folks in the Black community, in the Latino community. There were good candidates as part of those pools. And so I think we have to lead by example. I think the mayor's office has to be critically involved to ensure that we're making sure that we have diversity in our workforce in City Hall, that we are actively having the conversation with our major industries. I'm flashing back a little bit, I don't know if he's here tonight, but Stu Levitan on Facebook posted something up about a year ago. And it was an article from the 60s, and it was talking about a big initiative for hiring diversity, and it was like 20 people. And I keep seeing that article in my mind when we have these conversations, and I keep hearing the same conversations over and over again. And I think to Richard's point, every 5 years it seems that there is this conversation, and it continues to go nowhere. What we have to do is we have to step up, we have to take on active recruitment, and some of you might have been at the debate on the last week on the south side of the city, and there was a gentleman who got up to talk. And he was very upset. He was in charge of a workforce development program, specifically trying to get minority, working class, it was a lot of construction trades, into jobs. And he got up and actively challenged Mayor Soglin. Mayor Soglin actively challenged him back. And it was really heartbreaking to watch. It was frustrating to watch, because here he is heading up this program, saying the employers are not hiring the people that we are training that are qualified for these positions. And so under this administration, it has not been happening. My administration would take a very different approach. I think it's critically important that we step up, that we are ensuring that if we're spending money and that we're partnering with folks in the private sector in these workforce development programs, that we have results and that we have, that people are being retained. Because it doesn't do any good to hire someone and then have them leave, because the culture of the workforce is really corrosive. So I think that there's a lot that we can do. I've seen a model, I've been digging in on policy ideas, and one thing on workforce development that we can do within City Hall is look at all of our agencies, and this is not just about race, but also about gender, and making sure that our industries and our agencies, some are the secretarial pool is very heavily dominated by females. A lot of the technical fields are dominated by men. We want to make sure that we have equal wages across sectors, and that's something that we could do internally on an HR basis. So my time is up. I will pass the microphone.
So I run a tech company, and in the field of technology, it is hard to find applicants, both women and people of color. Right now, the state of Wisconsin graduated 5 students of color taking the computer science exam, and that's my future workforce. What we ended up doing from part of the tech community was we grouped together. We put together internship programs to make sure that every single student, we could make sure that our workplace was as diverse as possible, that we could make sure that we could have the skill sets to find people, to make sure that we have jobs and employment. That's what I did in the private sector. What we've learned in the private sector is we can't always be looking for degrees. Just because someone has a master's degree, It doesn't mean they're any more or less skilled than someone who's been doing the same exact job for 22 years and still could do that same better than just because you have an education. If you look at some of the reasons why we don't see a diverse pool at the very top, is we don't see some of the qualifications that we're looking for. What we need to be looking for are skills. We need to be looking at people and who can accomplish what job. And we look at that as our sector heads, we look at that as our agency heads, and I think the city of Madison can do better. Now, when we talk about disparity studies, we need to take true action. When it takes time, when we're holding back, when the city council says let's move forward with moving forward on issues of equity and initiatives, it means we want to see a mayor that steps forward and says we're going to see these actions in place. You look at the jobs that are being performed in the city of Madison, both in the construction trades and fields, and when we see that labor coming out that's not labor from the city of Madison, when we see labor being used from other states, we're doing something wrong here in our community. The mayor controls the bully pulpit. The mayor can talk to business leaders if they have the right communication skills, if they can reflect, if they can empathize, and if they treat business leaders with respect. We can see more hires being made. We can see a more diverse community. And if we're talking about that, 4 years from now, we'll be talking about all the employment that we've been able to bring to the city, all the new jobs that we've been able to place people in, instead of talking about what we're going to be doing over the course of the next 4 years. Thank you.
Alderman Maniaci, you're getting into the same league as Alderman Resnick. If you really want to discuss these things, you don't take a distortion. Why don't you talk about the hundreds and thousands of jobs that the city has, and the record, the first African-American police officer who was police chief who was hired during my administration, a fire chief, a woman of color was hired. All the changes that you look back over the years in terms of the diversity of the workforce occurred mostly in the years that I served as mayor. That comes in and rivals Alderman Resnick with his read this, folks, take a good look at it. And look at it in terms of how he's running from Judge Doyle Square, where he followed Mark Clear against the recommendation of myself and Alderman Revere on a path that led to outrageous costs and loss of time on the project. But let's talk about what's been done in the last 3.5 years. We've got an employee engagement and equity program to work internally to change attitudes, to make sure that the workplace is welcoming and fair for African Americans, for Latinos, for Asians, for women in non-traditional positions. We've changed the minimum qualifications and gotten rid of all those obstructions to hiring, which aren't related to the job. Working with Alderman Cheeks here, we banned the box, getting rid of obstructions in regards to arrest record that wasn't relevant to the job. We've changed the oral panels, and we no longer have people from out of town, people who don't look like the workforce, doing the interviewing. We've changed seasonal employment. Seasonal employment is one of the paths to permanent employment with the city. It is a disadvantage to get a job with the city if you don't open the door for seasonal employment. We made changes there. We changed manager contracts. Manager contracts were a disincentive for African Americans or people of color to pick up and move to the city to take a high qualified job. And then with the private sector, Alderman Resnick, what did we do? We went out, we worked with the private sector, so now we're part of HIRE, a $1 million commitment from the city and the private sector to create 200 jobs in the next couple of years for adults. And we've now got a fantastic summer youth employment program, which is going to open doors for those future city employees. That's what we've done in the last couple of years.
Well, I'm glad they banned the box finally. I think Dane County, we banned the box a lot longer before that. And it's a good job. You know, there's some things that's been done, I gotta admit, but there's not enough. As you look around, you see all the things that are happening. Here's the deal. Full employment is what we need. If you work 8 hours a day and you sleep 8 hours a day, there's not a lot of time where you can have problems, create any problems. It's going to help you on the crime scene. It's going to help you with everything. We have to find jobs. And so how do we find jobs? We have to put the jobs in the community. You know, when we give 21 million, 14 million to developers, why don't we cut a deal and say, hey, here's the RFP, you attach this to some hiring. Why don't you hire some people? And as far as some of the things that are done, as far as the construction, that's fine, but we have to do more training. We have more training. The construction deal is not going to help a whole lot of people, because if you look around, we don't even have people trained to be plumbers, electricians. So we need some training. We need to take some time and do some training. We need to put money into our communities. We can look around, even just looking in this community, you can go and look at our just the areas, the little shopping malls that's around here. They need repair. All the warehouses. You know the warehouses around here? You got a lot of warehouses in your district. They could be fixed, that there's to be business. There's an incubator. I'm the only one that actually created jobs. I ran an incubator where I worked with people developing jobs. We can do better. We just gotta have the will. We gotta have the will. And this just didn't start, like I say, this just didn't start in the last 3 years. This started 15 years ago. And a lot of these guys have done nothing. They just sit back and watch. And as we look at the cranes all around, and we watch everybody get richer and richer and richer, and we watch the class just split farther and farther and farther. And if we don't fix it, this place is going to eventually explode. And I can bring things together. I can bring this city together. When we work together for the common good, we're better. Now, is the common council working together with the mayor's office? No, they can't pass a budget. You sit them here arguing over issues. We have to come together. That's what I'm talking about, coming together for the common good. And what we'll do is we'll define that common good in my administration. And when we work together for the common good, we're better. We're all better. Thank you.
So I think that there are a lot of leaders in our communities of color in many different areas, in the nonprofits, in private business, and really there's a large pool to draw from. And it's the responsibility of this, whoever ends up in this higher elected position, to work with those communities and to go on the ground and find the people who are already there and who already know where the talent lies and where the passion is, and to recruit those people. I think that we should give credit where credit is due. I think that when Paul talks about the strides that have been made in the last 3 years, I believe him. I think that we've done well with what we've had, with the time that we've had. But as Richard says, yes, we can do better. We can always do better. I think that the office should seek to work with UW and MATC. Looks like UW is going to need the help coming up. And I think that, and nonprofits as well, in order to find that talent and to train people, in order to get them up to snuff, so that they can work with us and work within the city. I worked in the city clerk's office, and I was actually one of those seasonal hires. And it gave me a great feel for the way that things are done down there. And I met a lot of great people, and we have wonderful people already. And it is painful when those demographics don't reflect the actual makeup of our city. And it's really important that, well, think that actually, yeah, what Richard just said, light bulb. Yeah, of course, we should be working when a city contract is given out. We should attach stipulations to that contract to say that the company uses a certain number, which is at least reflective of the population of people of color or more. And that's a great way that we can lead the business community and direct the growth and opportunities and employment that we want to see. And so I think that's something that we should be looking at. That's something that I'm sure people on the table here have already considered and are considering. And you know, it's time that we did have this conversation. It's overdue, in fact. And I'm looking forward to continuing. Thank you.
Great. And for our third question, there's exciting development happening on East Washington and seemingly in all other parts of the city except the north side. We have available properties, available land for development, easy access to transportation routes, yet very little development seems to happen on the north side. We want to attract people to live here, and we need jobs for area residents. What will you do as mayor to bring more of a focus to the north side, and what can we do to help? We will start this with Resnick.
We need to be looking forward to a true economic development plan that represents the interests of the north side. Now, I look at one of the events that I was involved with, a group called Capital Entrepreneurs. This is the young group of entrepreneurs who are starting companies right here in this city. What we decided to do is we asked the question, how many of you have ever been to the north side? And the hands that went up were very few and far between. So what we made sure is we had an event over at the feed kitchen. We started out as a bicycle ride from our downtown out to feed, just to bring someone to the north side to see what it's like. Because when you look at what it takes to start a small business, you need affordable office space.
Did you say that like the west side last week?
You need affordable office space. You need to have strong human capital. You need to have individuals in place. What we ended up doing was having a group that came together to bring together the strengths of the North Side, and I was alongside the Northside Planning Council. And I was really excited about that. You know, what it takes is making sure that we're seeing true economic development of what's going to be the future of Chicago. What are going to be the future jobs that represent the interests right here in this neighborhood. Now, as someone who's been part of the business community right now for the last 7 years, what it means is we have an open door in City Hall, that we communicate regularly with business owners and find out what the needs are and listen and respect those needs. They can't go by deaf ear. I truly believe that the future expansion in Madison, and you'll see that right here on the north side, in many ways that we've seen promising growth through other areas of our city. It is going to take time, it's going to take hard work and perseverance, but I truly see that as a future of the city of Madison right here in the north side.
First, let me say I think there's an assumption in the question that's incorrect. There are two areas of the city that are getting disproportionately the greatest amount of investment. One is the Near East Side, and the other is those portions of the West Side which are proximate to Epic Systems in Verona. But I guess that if you were to make that statement east of Stoughton Road, east of the interstate, your neighbors there would disagree with the premise. But let me mention some of the things that have happened and will be happening in the future that I think will profoundly affect what happens on the north and the northeast side. First, yes, we do talk and we do work with people in the business community, particularly when they're looking for locations. And one of the areas where we did that a couple of years ago was a company that was not initially looking at this area, and I've got to give credit to the county on this one for their work, and that was Ale Asylum. We were doing everything we could to encourage them to stay in the city of Madison, not go to Fitchburg. And we offered up several sites. As it turns out, they're located very close here on county property at the airport. So that's one example of success. The second is to continue encouraging certain public investments in activities that will then spur on more private development. We all know that the extreme right-wing Tea Party view of the world that massive tax cuts is what grows an economy is incorrect. It's been proven time and time again. And so making an investment in the feed kitchens is another example. It is going to spawn and it will encourage the growth of a food industry here in Madison, and in some ways take us back to our roots, which are a community surrounded by very productive agriculture where value added to food through processing and manufacturing provides a healthy economy. The other thing I want to mention is the submission by me into the budget approved by the council of $1 million a year over the next several years to fund worker and productive cooperatives. I'm a firm believer in cooperatives. They don't run away, they don't leave you overnight, and they respect not only their workers but also their customers. Thank you.
First thing we have to do is we have to stop making foolish purchases. We got to stop making these just giving our money away to just consultants and studies that's sitting on the shelves collecting dust. If we can get a handle on that, what we can do is we can save some money. I want to create an office of performance analysis. And the reason why I want to do this is because I talked about the 8 hours a day. You work 8 hours a day, you sleep 8 hours a day. There's 8 hours left, right? Well, I was on the county board, and I imagine being on the city council is that you're working them 8 hours. You got 8 hours left. You got a family. You're gonna spend some time. You take a shower. You go to a game. How much time do you actually have to govern? What's happening is we have a city council that's not functioning perfectly. That's not functioning efficiently. That's not doing what it needs to do so that it can take care of the business so we can use these funds and create economic development zones. That's what we need to do. One of the things I want to do is my faith-based partnerships. Is what I want to do is I want to reach out to all the different religions out there, whether it's not or not. And what we want to do is we want to create more nonprofits. The structure is already there. So if we create more nonprofits, we create more jobs. And these jobs is going to stimulate the economy. The money's going to be spent, the tax base is going to grow, and you're going to have money to do things in your community. That's what we have to do. We have to put the money back into the community. And people say they'll do all the things that they're going to do. But if you sit back, just look what happened over the years. Look at the north side. There's a lot of things that could have been done. There's a lot of great things. You got the airport, you got the airport corner, right down through there. There's something, that has to be redeveloped. There's something that can be done down there. There's so many, you got the lakes, you got the building, you got all these different areas around here that could grow, but there has to be the will. I'll bring that will. I'll bring that will, and I've done it. I ran an incubator. We need to look at business incubators. We need to grow our own. And then we need to start looking at downtown is growing, and it's bustling, and everything is going to happen, and it's going to be open all through the day. But we also got to provide services that's going to spread out farther than downtown. The service industry is going to pick up really big. And we can tap into that thing. But we got to fix these areas, and we got to save our money. We got to get our money together so that we can be prepared, so that we can develop and put money in our community. We have to put the money back into the community and just quit just thinking about downtown.
So when we talk about the future of the North Side, Paul took the words right out of my mouth. And I think that we should be focusing absolutely on public agriculture We have the land here, it's there, it's already available to us. All we have to do is get it producing again. I think that there are lots of great jobs to be had in that area. And you grow the food, you can the food, you, I mean, I'm a big agriculture buff, or kind of, I haven't actually had the opportunity to work on a farm, but if we get one out here, I will certainly volunteer some time. It'll be a nice break from paperwork, I can imagine. Another thing that was mentioned was encouraging the growth of cooperatives and worker-owned businesses. And I think that that's the future of not just Madison, but everywhere in the country. People my age especially are seeing the benefit of being a co-owner of companies and really having a stake. And we don't like this idea that we have to be moving around to find jobs all the time. We like we have to make the jobs available here, and it's the responsibility of the mayor to oversee the growth in all areas of the city, and not just those that are already thriving. I think that we can strengthen MATC's role. I think that we can help them provide education and worker training. But finally, the future of development in Madison, with the budget constraints, with the way that the state is cutting funding for pretty much everything, the only option that we have, and I've said it before, is the public bank. Once the bank gets going, in a few years, maybe right before my second term, we will be able to create a significant amount of credit for people to get businesses started on the north side, on the west side, on the south side, everywhere. And I really look forward to this. And I look forward to this model being picked up by other places as well, because they say that nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and I think that the time has come for this idea. It's a large part of why I'm running. It's not the only reason, but it's something that I've been very excited about from the moment that I learned about it. And I know that a lot of people in Madison are also excited about it. I'm astounded by the number of people who have already heard of public banking, and the people who have already researched it, and the people who come and tell me things that I maybe only heard once in passing. Ultimately, that's how we can grow the north side. That's how we can, and working with the business community as it already exists, and focusing on the skills and the talent and the will that is already here. So, and it's time.
All right, if you guys saw the article about the first debate and not a lot of challenge to Paul, here's your moment. I'm sorry, I very much believe that Mayor Soglin has absolutely let the north side down on a number of fronts. And having been in the middle of all of that development right on East Wash, not only did I have to fight like hell for that grocery store when the mayor wanted a 3-story office building with surface parking lots, and it took me 6 months to kick that offline to get a better vision forward. But then there's been a lot of conversation about the Northside Planning Council and about the feed kitchen and about the roots and back to the roots. Well, my roots are in sauerkraut on the north side of the city. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the feed kitchen, or the fact that under this administration, they went along with the plan for the Northside Planning Council to borrow $450,000. They just had to lay off their executive director. They are out of their operating reserves. The north side is at a great risk right now. And whoever is going to be mayor is going to have to work through that and deal with that. Because it's been a huge disappointment. Because the group that's supposed to be there to have the resources to help bring this all together is not in a capacity to do so. So how do we do this? How did we do it on East Wash, right? Because I understand that there's a sense of downtown's getting all the good stuff. And I don't know, maybe I was a very good alder that I really fought for my district. But now I want to do this citywide. And it's not just on the north side. We have representatives here from the Albion Neighborhood Association and Cottage Grove Road and the Century Store going out. That's been sitting there and languishing. And I'm sick of seeing my city languishing. You have to stand up, you have to fight for good things. And that hasn't been happening. How did we do it on East Wash? Well, we went through land banking. We got control of the site. One of the things also that the city hasn't been doing right now is we don't have a commercial property inventory. And I've heard direct experiences from small business owners who are trying to open businesses in the city who got the runaround at City Hall. There was no easy point person for them to go to look to open businesses. And that's how they go to Wanakee. That's how the brewery went to Wanakee. That's how folks are opening businesses in Sun Prairie. They are overlooking the north side because the city is not putting in the resources to bring businesses here and to have a strategic plan here and to invest in the organizational capacity like with the Northside Planning Council to go along with a plan that I don't think was a very strategic decision, especially because if you look at the operating structure to the feed kitchen, this is starting to shape up like Overture, okay? And we are heading down a path that's not sustainable for that facility. So we have to ask tough questions. And part of being mayor is you don't always get to have, it's not all ribbon cuttings. There's these really tough issues, and the north side is going through that right now. And we need a mayor that will fight for a better future, and it hasn't been happening. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to start with some questions from the audience, and each candidate will have 2 minutes then to respond to the question. The first question from the audience we've selected is as follows. Madison is an expensive city to live in. Whether the issue is property taxes, housing rental rates, or utilities, for too many of Madison's residents, living expenses are far too high. A problem in the city are business monopolies, particularly relating to utilities and landlords. The mayor is the ultimate person responsible in helping set the standard for living expenses that a person needs to pay in order to live in the city. What steps would you take as mayor to help lower rents, property taxes, bring in more utility companies, and also companies who offer well-paying jobs? And we'll start with Mayor Sullivan.
Unfortunately, a good part of the answer to the question we just heard lies in state law, lies in what the state of Wisconsin legislature has done to us over the years. For example, there was a time when 35% of the city's revenues came from the property tax. Now it's closer to 75%. And that is, in fact, a result of what the Wisconsin legislature has done to us. Interesting question about the utilities. In terms of Madison Gas and Electric, at one point we looked at alternatives, and unfortunately, the statutes regulated, and the analysis that we did showed that if we were, for example, to buy out MG&E under the statutes, it would actually be easier to start our own grid system, our own power plant. And the cost of that is just absolutely beyond control. On the other hand, there are some areas where we can work, but I want to go back to just the principles in terms of housing. This is one of the areas where supply and demand has some impact on the market. And that's one of the reasons why we've been trying in a planned, rational way to develop as much housing as possible, to take the pressure off and to allow for greater options in the marketplace. Second thing I want to go back to is what I said earlier. First, dealing with the state weeder tax credits. We just left millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars worth of housing development on the table over the last decade. And there's no way of correcting that except we are now going forward, working with developers, working with neighborhood groups on utilizing those tax credits.
Everybody knows that my whole campaign centralized around holding the line on taxes. Holding the line on taxes because my strong fiscal background as an auditor, accountant, budget analyst, systems accountant. So one of the things we got to look at is we got to look at stop being so confrontations. Why can't we just come together? Remember I say when we work together, I know I say that a lot, but let's look at partnerships, shared agreements. We can't come together. The county and Zach and the mayor's office, they don't work together. We can work together. I can work with the mayor's office. I can work with the county. I can work with Joe Parisi. I can work with him. Matter of fact, I'm a systems accountant. We need to work together. Here's just one idea I just looked at, one quick idea. If we can, I was a commissioner on the Dane County Housing Authority. We have CDA and the Dane County Housing Authority that does the exact same thing. They do the exact same thing. If we can bind them two agencies, just working together. There's a lot of other things, like in IT, you know, and even accounting. We just got, the city is getting a new municipal system. You know, if we work together to share services, and I'm not talking about reducing government, I'm talking about reducing costs so that we can use them dollars to do the things and the disparities and all the things that we need to do. We just gotta work smarter. But first, this don't come overnight. You can't, you know what? You can't write a computer program if you don't know the language. And you can't do accounting. You can't do business if you don't know the language. And you got to know how to talk policy and fiscal language. You got to know what you're doing. And I got years and years of this. And this is the why. This is the reason why we're in this condition we're in now.
All right, so now we're going to get to hear the rest of what I was going to say with my introduction. So Madison is an expensive city to live in, and unless we are very careful about the sort of business development and land development that we allow to go on in the city, then it is going to get more expensive. Santa Fe, San Antonio, San Francisco, they have all seen a heavy influx of innovative new businesses in tech and et cetera. And as a result, they've seen people pushed out. People who work in service, and I've worked in service in Madison, and I know how it is, making $6.25 an hour after everything is said and done in a restaurant. And that was within the last 5 years. And things are only getting harder. So what we need to do is think about innovative financial solutions. And I've said it already. I won't have to say it again, I don't think. We need the public bank. Now, as far as the rent or the cost of simply living here, yeah, I was out with Repower Madison well, I don't like to say protest. It was more of an action, you know, around the proposal to raise the base rates on people living in the city. And you know, we were thankful. I once again give credit where credit is due. The city stopped MG&E from raising them to such a ridiculous amount over the next 5 years at $70 base rate, which of course puts a lot of pressure on low-income people, on students, on elderly people. But we need to really push back a little bit, and I'm certainly willing to do that. And as far as creating a public utility of the city's own, I think that once we have the access to the credit through the public bank, we can consider that option. Or perhaps we could simply buy MG&E stock until a point where we have majority ownership, and then we could buy MG&E for probably a little bit less cost-wise. So that's my proposal.
Well, I'm going to focus on the question about the cost of living and living in Madison and the cost going on. I'm looking at my day-to-day life. Friends of mine, whether you're single, whether you're having children, whether you're a retiree in the school district, and looking at the city and how the growth that we're seeing, which is very good in a lot of ways, creates a wobble for a lot of other folks within the community. I've talked a lot about this idea that I have to look at affordable housing in the city really comprehensively, using the CDA and putting forward an annual fund of $10 to $15 million. Because the reality is we need thousands of units of housing. We do. We're blessed that everybody wants to be here, right? That's a great problem to have. It's a lot better than a lot of other cities around the country. But, you know, I look at things and I look at senior housing. You look at all the baby boomers, and I see many of you here tonight, and looking at how are we going to shift the city for this big cohort that's aging. How do you age in place? Can the city invest in programs to help that homeowner stay in their home? You know, and on the other end of the spectrum, looking at friends of mine who are just starting to have children, and it doesn't really matter what income level you are at, but having to put your child in childcare is an income-having proposition. I have some friends who work in DC city government. DC totally different than Madison. They're more like quasi-city state. But they've been able to get off the ground a 3-year-old preschool program that really incentivizes for families to stay in the city, helps with that cost of living. It's something I really want to do here. I don't know how we're going to fund it. So that's something that I want to work on. I want to continue to look at how can we look at some options. New York has had some success. I'm very concerned about with our state legislature. So I want to be honest with you, because I'm getting up here. I'm looking at the options of how we can move forward, and those are a couple of ideas. Thank you.
You know, I'll piggyback on some of the issues that Richard brought up. But what it does come down to is how we use our tax roll. We talk about projects on Judge Doyle Square. And when you come into a debate at the 23rd hour, when you don't show up to the city council meeting where we were deciding between done or journeyman, when you let our city go forward without any guidance on a $44.6 million decision, when you take a vote to say continue negotiating with those developers, we have our priorities out of sync. We need to be looking at what the priorities of our city are and where our future is going. Much of it comes down to is how do you age in place? How do you ensure that someone can remain in their home that they grew up in? How do you make sure that when it comes to the community access that you need, that you can find it provided by City Hall? That's where your tax roll should be going towards. I think when it comes to utilities, we need to be looking towards the future. When we look at creating a Madison Internet Co-op utility, we can have that in place. So we're not having the same conversation about MG&E 30 years from now. I think there's a lot that we can do in the city of Madison to make sure that it's affordable to live in our community, that you can grow and raise a family in our city, but it can't be done if taxes are too high and people feel like they're being pressured out of their home.
Our last, possibly last community question is actually going to be a compilation of a few. There were quite a few cards that were concerned about homeless shelters in the city, if you're for building new ones, if you're for, I think a possible solution was taxing artists that come and perform in the city and using that funding for helping those in our city that need it. So I guess we could ask, what would you do for the homeless in our community if you were mayor? And we are going to start with Brown. Yes.
Well, wow, homeless. You know, I tell you, every day I walk past and go to work in the city county building. You know, like I say, I feel like the bad Samaritan. And so, you know, everybody knows the story about the Samaritan. But I decided to stop. That's why I'm running for mayor. I'm stopping. I just can't not do anything. And so, when we talk about homeless, okay, let's first talk about, I'm the only one that's sitting up here that ever provided affordable housing. And believe it or not, that I think of, I don't know. And believe it or not, I'm talking about in the business. And you know, I was a housing provider. And I tell you, a lot of the people are still calling me now. And a lot of the people are homeless right now. So what I would do, I understand what the issue is. My Office of Faith-Based Partnerships would create a revolving shelter. And the only reason why I'm saying shelter, because I don't believe that shelters is the answer. Shelters is for just short term. You see what I'm saying? It's just for emergency. They call it emergency shelters. It's emergency. And so if we take the concept of shelters, that's not it. But one of the things we wouldn't do is we wouldn't turn away someone in the middle of the night that's freezing. So we can revolve our shelters through our churches. And we can do a lot more things like Porch Light is doing through Grace. So I would expand that. And we would do more housing. And what else? Through the faith-based partnership program, what we could do is I would go to the landlords in all 20 districts, and I could work with them. And what we would do is we would get them to work with our faith-based organizations, and we provide housing. And my goal is to get 200 homeless kids off the streets in my first 100 days. And when we do that in 100 days, the next 100 days we'll get 200 more, and we'll continue and continue until it's over. Thank you.
So the issue of homelessness in our city is one of our most visible problems. And it's one of the reasons that I really did get into this race. I've been working on the Capitol Square for 2 years, and I saw people outside every single day, and it hurt. It hurt me to see them there. It hurt me that I wanted to do more, and so this is what I propose that we do. The state of Utah decided that the simplest solution would be to provide people places to live with no strings attached, free of cost, until they no longer needed it. And that means that we could work with landlords and rental companies to place people in permanent housing, and that we could provide them the access to services and mental health treatment and substance treatment that they need. And this is something that it is time for us to do. I think as far as treating the emergency cases where someone has just lost their housing and they're out on the streets, I think that the city has a number of vacant properties that we are sitting on at the moment, waiting for an attractive offer that we could maybe make money off of. I think that we should open them up and make them available now as service centers, as mental health treatment centers. And I applaud what the MPD has recently done in creating a mental health task force. And I'm glad that we are moving forward now. But we can do more, and it will involve us using the resources that we already have. I don't think that we should be spending new money to create new housing for only a limited swath of the population. I think that we should be trying to tackle the problem in its entirety. And finally, oh wait, no, that was it.
Well, I had one of those shelters in my district, the Salvation Army. And I saw children sitting on the sidewalk. And we have 1,000 homeless children in our city. I've been working with the Salvation Army and talking with the mayor and some of their board members, asking them, you know, YWCA just did a $10 million capital campaign for renovation of their facility. What's your long-term plan for that property on East Washington Avenue? So we've been having an ongoing discussion. I put up on my website a proposal that I have looking at that 600 block of East Washington Avenue. Right now, it's really just mostly surface parking lot space. I can give you a lot of the background of the neighborhood dynamic of that property, but there's a better way of having a facility there. And what I talked with the mayor about was, your client base is doubly served by that location. Don't go move out to Darbo. Don't push people out farther. That central location is on transit, it's easy access to jobs and resources. And so I want to reinvest in the heart of the city, right next to the high-rent high-rises. We should be able to build a neighborhood that works for the most vulnerable among us as well. One thing that O'Keefe Middle School then did in partnership with Salvation Army that was helpful for a while and has now kind of fallen away was they actually had a remedial or stabilization group assembled to work with the children that were coming into the shelter to get them stabilized. And we have to be doing more of that. The city has to ensure that that's happening and that coordination between the school district and the service providers is happening. And then, you know, the Homeless Day Resource Center. Part of the reason also of the conflicts that I saw on a block-by-block real level was that families were trying to stay together. And the men are not allowed in the shelter. So being able to anchor a corner right there with a day resource center would really cut down on a lot. So I'm trying to offer really pragmatic solutions because I had Occupy Madison in my district. I've seen this situation up close and personal, and the solutions have not been happening. Thank you.
First, there's a couple different points here. First, we can't be looking at this and blaming it on issues of Chicago and Rockford and Milwaukee. We need to be looking deep inside and saying, how are these issues impacting Madison? Now, I would look at this and say we have a supportive, right now, city council to support a housing first strategy. I was there when the mayor needed votes on this. We are here as a city council to say that housing first is a direction that we are satisfied that our city is going in, to make sure that every single person has a roof over their head. It should be a basic right, a basic premise in our community. We need to be looking, though, for also transitional housing. You have individuals who are going to need emergency services one way or another. These are individuals who may have issues with substance abuse. may have issues with mental illness, and we need to have a unified strategy to deal with these individuals immediately to get them into services before we can get someone into housing first. The reality is we are never going to keep up with the demand if we only think that we're going to continue to build and not have those emergency resources together. But it's going to have to be a unified strategy. The city, the county, our nonprofit, our for-profit community working together. Not here to place blame or to say who's right or who's wrong in these situations, but together we're going to be able to accomplish these issues.
One of the challenges in dealing with these issues is sometimes it's uncomfortable talking about the truth and the facts. But that's the only way we're going to solve these problems. First of all, we ought to look into ourselves and say, why, when the United Way recommended 8 years ago that we adopt a housing first strategy, did we have to look at the incredibly progressive Salt Lake City, Utah, and Phoenix, Arizona, as the beacons of edification to know how to deal with the problem? The problem is housing first is the only thing that works. It is the permanent solution. The city, thank you. The city of Madison had a number of housing programs, but we didn't have an organized plan. So several years ago, we created the position of a housing specialist, who in turn wrote a report, which we've now adopted, and we are on the track. But to make it work, you've got to have not just housing, but you have to have linked transportation, quality child care, education, and job training, and health care, which includes nutrition, it includes mental health, and it includes dealing with substance abuse. That is how it works. Now, one of the realities is that we don't have enough capacity by ourselves, without calling others accountable, to deal with this issue. And whether or not you want to admit it, when you do, thank you.
We have two more sections of our forum tonight. The first is to allow each candidate an opportunity to give you closing remarks. And that will be followed by your chance to meet the candidates one-on-one in a meet and greet. Because we introduced the candidates in alphabetical order, starting with Mr. Brown, we're going to allow the candidates to do a closing statement in reverse alphabetical order, starting with Mr. Sullivan.
Excuse me. The very first question is very important. None of the candidates answered. It's about the high percentage of low-income children in the 3 Northside elementary schools. We have the highest in the city, 77% at Lakeview, 75.6 at Mendota, and 75.2 at Lindbergh. None of you answered that. And what are you going to do about it? It's not going to get better. So what are you going to do? And the city just approved giving a developer $1 million to build 72 units on Tennyson. That's not going to help our kids. Don't you understand? You talk about racial equality. What are you doing? So I want to know what all of you are going to do to change this for the north side of Madison.
And that would be a good topic as your remarks.
First, I want to point out that income levels in that recently approved housing go up to $42,500 a year. Let's understand that there's going to be a variety of income, including people working full-time in that area. And the way you address that issue is by creating jobs. I want to go back to the disparity. This is really going to take me off my closing, but I do want to go back to the disparity study. The disparity study is based on census data from the year 2011, 10, and 9. And while we don't have all the comparable data today, we do know that in terms of African American unemployment, it has been reduced 9% in the first 2 full years for which I returned to office. Now, closing. If I wanted to be, how much time do I have? If I wanted 1 minute. If I wanted to be Mr. Congeniality, I would never run for mayor. But I live by a rule that I adopted many years ago, which I call the 60-minute rule, which comes from that television show. I never want to be in a situation where someone comes to me and asks, what did you know? When did you know it? And then, what did you do about it? I always want to be in a position to say, I took on the responsibility for which I promised to serve you. When I came back into office, we immediately had a disagreement that first year with the city council. The council had committed $17 million for a TIF for the Edgewater Hotel. We did an analysis and said, no, it's $3 million. Now, what do you want me to do? Roll over, not keep my commitment, or stay with a promise which turned out to be right for your interests? Thank you.
It's about what we can do when we're all working together. The city, the county, our nonprofit, our for-profit world, and when we're all working towards the end good to make Madison the greatest place to live, work, and play. I'm running because I don't have an ego. I'm not here to say that I have all the answers. I'm here to say that it comes from our citizens and it comes from our residents. That I will always be here to pick up a phone call. That I will always be here to hear public input, whether I agree with it or not. Now, we've been making decisions in City Hall in a way that's unprofound. It's a way that when one person has all the answers and one person can sit in front of us and say, this is the way it's going to be, it's the way to work together. And that's not any solution. We talk about TIF. We talk about the Edgewater Hotel. And what I was waiting for was that analysis. I have never seen the analysis that the mayor is talking about as someone who is voting on those decisions. I have seen different times where I've been lectured. I've seen different times where folks that are close to us have been put down, my colleagues and residents of our community, because of disagreements. But the reality is, the mayor ran in 2011 on a theme of working together, look what we're able to accomplish. And the truth is, we're combative in City Hall. We're letting our communities down, and we can do so much more if we're working together. Thank you.
So February 17th, you have choices in front of you. Why am I running for mayor? Why run against the multi-term incumbent who seems to have run the city for many years and we're a great city? Why change? Why now? The reality is that we are very much heading for a cliff. And it's very easy to get up here and say, oh, but we're studying it. Oh, and look what we're doing. And a little bit to Scott's point, what I have seen across multiple mayoral administrations is night and day. And the reality is that City Hall is failing our neighborhoods right now, and the mayor's office is absolutely failing our neighborhoods right now. And might have read the press. I'm not afraid of bullies, and I'm going to stand up to the guys. And there's things going on in City Hall right now that are very upsetting and very troubling. So if the mayor wants to say that I didn't do my homework, that the city couldn't support $16 million on the Edgewater TIF, then I'd like to see the analysis for the $13 million that's going for Anchor Bank on the Capitol Square for their parking ramp. It's incredibly hypocritical. So show the analysis, because likewise, that $3 million TIF analysis never materialized. And so if you want to stand up to the bullies, you have to run. You have to stand up. You have to fight for your neighborhoods. I have a solid track record in City Hall of getting results. And I hear here tonight that the Northside wants investment. They want good things. They want those new neighbors, that next 30-year resident, to really lift this neighborhood up. And you're not getting it right now. with the current leadership in City Hall. And I want to work to see the success that we've been able to do in my district in downtown and bring that to the north side, to Park Street, to Cottage Grove Road. So I hope that you will stand up and on the primary, give me the shot to take this on for the next 6 weeks. And let's have this debate. Thank you.
So, with my limited experience, it is my understanding that the city and the school districts have to work together in order to create better opportunities for their students. And I look forward to doing that. I think that it's essential. And I think that there's a lot that you all have to offer in terms of guidance and ideas, and I'm glad that this question came up, and I'm glad that it was brought up that we hadn't answered it before, because that's what active citizens need to do in order to shape public policy. And I'm kind of in a unique position. I need that input. That's all that I can really go on once I'm in there. I mean, besides the incredible skill sets that are already in City Hall now. I would like to say one, for a closing remark. The real greatest problem facing our city and our country is debt. Our city owes a lot of money. Although it hasn't gone up significantly in the last few years, we still owe quite a bit. And the only way that we're going to do anything about it is by taking control of our own financial futures. And this is something that goes beyond the north side. It affects all corners of Madison. We need to do something that allows us the freedom to provide for our own citizens. And it's going to come when we finally decide collectively that that it's time, enough is enough. That we don't really have a choice now. And yes, we are looking at a cliff. And that cliff will come when the derivatives market collapses again. And it's not something that people like to talk about because nobody likes to get all scared and apprehensive. But it's something that we need to talk about. And if it has to be me, then it has to be me.
Yes, high density, low income housing in the neighborhood is a problem. I know. I've seen it at Lake Point. I've seen it at Ally. I've seen it on Russet. I own property on all that. I know the effect of it. So yes, I feel you and I understand. But the key is we gotta create jobs. We gotta change it around because they push them somewhere else and then they have another high density. Let's fix the problem. Let's fix the people that are there. When you look at them, let's fix them. Okay, that's it. Now my closing. Okay, here's what I want to say. I want you guys to just look at me. Okay, and look at everybody else up on here on the stage. Okay, just look at me. Okay, on the county board for 3 terms, passed the budget, 37-0, 36-1. Okay, a collaborate. My strong fiscal background. There's so many things I've done. I was a federal prison guard, incarcerations, housing. I did affordable housing. Is that what we're talking about? It's everything that we are, everything that we did. Still keep looking at me and look at everybody else. All my struggles, and we're gonna sit here and we're gonna say to ourselves, we care about racial disparities. I had to maneuver through this. The same disparities that everybody's going through, that's what I went through. And I had to do all this while I did my job, while I did all the things, while I accomplished all these things, while I coached football, while I coached at the high school, while I got the J.C. Wright Award, while I was doing all the things in our community. Not just today, not when I just started to run for office, but every day for 32 years since I've been here. I love this city. That's why I'm running, because we got to do better. Look at me, look at them, and imagine my plight.
And we are nearing 7:30, so we want to thank all the candidates for taking time out of your day to come here and talk with us. We'd also like to thank everybody. I believe you guys will be able to talk with some audience members afterwards if you have time. Okay. We do have this room through 7:30, but if we could allow the staff to maybe remove the chairs, that would be great. Warner Park does close at 8 p.m., so make sure any conversations don't last too long. And then shameless plug to our Facebook page. Maybe we can get some of the candidates to answer the remaining questions and post them online. Thank you. It's been voted on February 17th.